Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of AngularAir. I'm Justin, your host, and on today's episode, we are going to be diving into and talking about progressive state management. It's kind of a follow-up to our previous episode where we had some NGXS content. We're going to have more of that, so more state management goodness. Looking forward to it. Before we get started today, I want to give a big shout out to, we have a new sponsor. StreamYard is graciously sponsoring us. Their solution powers all of our AngularAir episodes. It's an awesome utility for doing streaming. If you're looking for hosting a live show with multiple guests, need to stream to different sources, and want to do that all within your browser, definitely recommend StreamYard. Excellent product, and we love it here. So just want to plug that. And with that, let's get to it. Say hi to our panelists, then we'll meet our guest. Joining us today, we've got Alyssa. Alyssa, what's going on?
Hello, hello. So glad to be here.
Super excited to have you. I've got a later time of the show today to accommodate our guest, who is in a completely different time zone. I think all the way 180 degrees around the side of the earth from where we're at. Alexei, how's it going?
Yeah, hey guys, it's all going good. So it's 8 in the morning. So yeah.
Wait, are you saying it's Thursday for you?
Yes, it is. It's Thursday.
Yeah, not only is it different, that much of a time difference, but it's a whole different day.
Oh,
Absolutely. So I'm kind of talking to you from the future, guys, right?
Nice. Alyssa and I were commenting before the show how we were hoping it's Friday. I guess you're a little bit closer to Friday than we are.
Yes.
Nice. All right, well, do you want to tell our viewers a bit about yourself? Kind of introduce yourself and what you got going on?
Oh, yeah. So, guys, my name is Aliaksei Kuncevič. I am an Angular expert, a mentor, and independent consultant, helping companies to adopt Angular in the most efficient way by applying solid architectures and best practices. Also, I'm organizing Angular Minsk and Angular Sydney and front-end tech meetups. Also, I'm running an online and offline Angular workshops and teaching Angular at kuncevic.dev. So yeah, build this thing, maybe some of you have seen it already, called frontendwatch.com. So it's like an online resource when you can learn more about modern front-end frameworks and see the recent trends. Also, recently I become a part of NGXS core team. So yeah, that's pretty much about me. And NGXS core team is like a global team of world-class professionals. In total, we have like more than 80 years of software industry experience. So yeah, pretty excited about that.
Nice. A lot of knowledge and experience behind the NGX.
Actually, we still count in Austin, the original author of this library, as a team member. But if we add his experience to these 8 years, it will be about 100 years of experience, I think.
Nice. Nice. So a lot of thought and care has gone into this solution, right?
Sorry, once again?
I was just saying, all those years, a lot of thought and care has gone into building the solution, right? Absolutely. All that collective knowledge.
The additional experience of this is really helpful. Yeah, that's correct.
Nice. All right, so go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you go.
I was just going to ask about progressive state management.
Yeah. So that's basically a topic of today. And so today I'm going to be talking about progressive state management, and I talk a little bit about common problems in single-page applications, how we solve them. Then I touch a little bit on reactive services as an approach for that and to solve some of those problems. And then I talk about state management in general and how to take your application from reactive services to the next level with NGXS. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to cover these topics today with you guys.
Nice.
So also today I'll be showing you a small demo and a little bit of code. So yeah, three things: presentation. As a part of presentation, I'll demonstrate some bits of code, and then I'll show you a demo application. So very simple demo application. So yeah, if you ready, I can go ahead.
I'm ready. Alyssa, are you ready? And I guess we'll talk for our viewers. They're ready.
All right. Hopefully everyone is ready. I wonder actually where all the people come in. I know you can comment in the chat, so it would be exciting to see where all the people come in watching the show. Yeah. So, okay. So what is a progressive state management, you might wonder? Progressive state management is a development technique when you progressively enhancing the functionality of the application state in a way it won't affect the existing data flow and existing structure of your application, right? So that's basically the definition. The idea here is to keep things simple. So there is no, if there is no real need to produce any additional layer of complexity, just don't do this initially. So start with the reactive services and just use this approach until you find a need to bring a fully featured state management solution. So yeah, as a next step, you can go this path if you are developing small, maybe small to medium size application, but it's also depends on your exact use case. So maybe sometimes you don't want that. Also, this approach might be very helpful for those who are new to Angular and who new to state management concepts. So they have to learn all those new bits, right? At first place, you just can learn a little bit of Angular and then just jump into reactive services so you can build your solution this way. Because additional concepts always giving you additional overheads and learning curve. And yeah, so if you're new, it might be quite tricky to learn everything in one go. So what is the most common problem we are facing when developing single-page application using modern front-end framework like Angular? So I guess some of you have some thoughts on that, right? The common problems. But today we're not going to cover every problem, right? Today we're talking about component communication. So yeah, and data flow.
That GIF was like stressful.
Yeah, actually, when I preparing presentation, this sort of screen is taking the most time because I have to search for proper image, and sometimes you have to alter it. It's like, I don't know, you can spend hours on this sort of screen. So yeah, when component initiating a change, everything what rely on the change, we want it to be updated accordingly, right? Everyone like this sort of reactivity approach in Angular, as NGXS and things like that. So, and we as developers, we need to solve that problem as efficient as possible. So luckily, Angular helps us to achieve a lot of things like that. And based on the exact use case, we might approach this in a different way. So normally, our apps has a nested component structure. It can go even more crazy than that. Components within this structure interacting with each other. So this way, the data flows around the application. Okay, I think my screen is get off. Let me see.
We see your yeah, there you go. We just didn't see your webcam. You're
right.
Back.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you see me guys now?
You are yellow for me. Just yellow, like the most solid color of yellow I've ever seen.
I need to refresh the screen later, but yeah, I go on without my face. Sorry guys about that. So yeah, the components communication can get really crazy. Here is a simple example of filtering. Based on the search term on a filter component, the result components needs to be updated with a new data accordingly. So I guess you guys know where this example is coming from. It's from Angular.io, our favorite website, right?
Nice.
So sometimes we can solve this problem just by using input and output mechanism built in Angular, but we don't want to always use it. In case of some deep nested components within an application, you probably have to avoid it. I mean, yeah, because it might imply a little bit of boilerplate, and if you want to pass a value from the bottom component to the top component, that can be like really tricky to achieve. So Yeah, that's basically nested. In case of nested component, yeah, you can have a little bit of additional code you have to maintain as well if you're going forward with this sort of implementing input and output everywhere in your application. So as a solution for that, let's use reactive services. Reactive services is just a wrapper on top of React.js behavioral subject. I also like to call it RX services, in short. If you guys have any questions so far, just go ahead.
Until point out
if you have questions or not, I'll try to turn my screen on again. But yeah.
Awesome. I just wanted to point out really quick, because you talked about progressive state management. It's kind of similar to progressive enhancement, right? It's kind of clarified that in the very beginning, where we're saying, look, as our application goes, when we're creating it, we need more features. So we start adding into this feature to solve a problem. And so you're saying we need to solve component communication. And so how can we solve that? And the first step is to progressively add reactive services and work our way up.
Exactly. That's the idea. Yeah, correct. So yeah, that's reactive services, and using this approach, we can solve the component communication and data flow in our apps in quite elegant and a simple way, just by relying on poor React.js behavior subject. So let's see the demo. I want to show you the demo. Oops. So that's basically the demo. It's a very simple application. It contains of 3 separate Angular modules. So just a simple counter, basically. So in this case, it's a reactive services example. And later on the day, I'll show you NGXS example, NGXS data example, and what's the difference. But yeah, so basically it's a simple counter with a couple of components. Every component has this plus and minus button. And in a container component, it just displays the summary. That's all. That's all it does. So let me show you some code. So here in my reactive service folder, which is implementation of my current solution for with reactive services, I have just one service. It's looking like this. So within this service, I have an interface. It's basically the shape of my, can we call it store? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, that's the shape of the data, which this service is responsible for. I can set the initial value, and I have a couple of methods here: set value 1, set value 2, set value 3. And also, you might see I'm talking about behavior subject, but there is no behavior subject in this service. You might wonder, hey, like where is the behavior subject? Okay, if we look here a little bit closely, I'm actually extending the RX service. So RX service is coming from this simple library I built recently. It's called RX service. So, and that's where all the bits, the core bits is sitting, right? So here I have a behavior subject declared as a local state. It's just a definition, guys. It's like a definition file here, the TypeScript definition. So which comes from this library. And so I can expose this behavior subject as an observable using and I can access this observable using state $. So I can set state, get state, and reset state. That's all this service does. And then I can extend this service, and I can use all these methods within this service to actually achieve things like that. So here, basically, I'm setting value 1, value 2, and value 3. So yeah, this way. So how we consuming this service within components? I mean, it's just normal Angular TypeScript service, right? It's a normal class, so there is nothing fancy about it. What we do, we just import it, inject it into our component constructor. So in this particular case, it's a parent component. So yeah, so I'm injecting it here. I'm declaring a variable value because I'm looking this component looking for this particular value, value 1. And on ginit, I'm just assigning this value from my service. So I'm accessing my service using pipe map, and then I just, hey, give me a value 1. So you can use probably plug here if you want, but I like to use map. So, and then this additional method update value. So I call in my service again, and I can set a value. Well, let's see how template looks like. So it's pretty straightforward template with a couple of buttons. You already saw the visual representation of that. Yeah, so basically I'm displaying the current value and now updating this current value for this particular component. It's value 1. And yeah, so I can update it like by increasing or decreasing. And if you look at the rest of the components, it's exactly the same idea. So just every component just responsible for different values, that's all. But the code is pretty much similar. And in my container component, what I do, I just summarizing, right? So I don't need to store my summary value within a service. Because the source of truth is value 1, value 2, value 3. So here I just summarizing it this way. And yeah, that's basically how it works. And then I just displaying it in a component. So, and this code allows me to build this sort of app. So yeah, that's basically the idea. If you guys have any questions so far about the code.
So I was just wondering, you separated out the stuff into, you called it RX service, I think. Is that, yeah. And then, well, inside of this, I think you're importing RX-service. So
yep.
So I'm talking about inside of RX service, is that, so you said you created that. Is that just for this project or is that something reusable?
Yes, it's reusable. It's an NPM library. So actually I'm installed it from NPM. So I push it to NPM and now I install it from NPM to this project. Originally, I didn't have this as an NPM library. I was just having this code as a separate file. But then I thought, hey, actually, I want to reuse it across the projects and maybe someone else want to use it. So I just published it maybe a couple of weeks ago. Currently, it's version 0.8, but it's production ready.
Very nice.
Nice.
So yeah.
And then you're setting up this counter service to be provided in root. So we only have one instance of it across the entire application. So we have one instance of this state, right?
For this particular case, yes. But maybe you can go a little bit more clever about it if you want. But for demonstration purposes, it's just a simple application. Yeah, it works this way. So it's only one single service in this application. There is no other services here. But do you think, like, would you approach it a little bit differently? Like, what's your thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, I think this is good. Like the concept is that you're providing state management and you're leveraging observables to get a hold of that, so that, like you said, in the reactive scenario, throughout the components, you can make use of your async pipe to subscribe to those. You won't have to worry about the on push and change detection as a result of that. So you get that goodness of the RxJS behavior, the reactive state of that. And then you have a way to carry across that state across different components. So however many child components you go nested or whatnot, they just need to inject this service and they get a hold of the access to that state data, right?
Yes, correct.
And then the provided in root, here is essentially saying, give me a singleton for the entire app experience. But you could also say, look, if I needed this counter service to keep state for 2 different screens maybe or something, or 2 different parts of my layout, I could, have that provided at an ng module level or a component level to then allow for the same state structure to be keeping separate instances of state across the different UI. So there's a lot of things you could solve as a result of having something like this. Yeah.
Does that mean you have like 2 stores then if you do something like that?
You can go with any number of Rx services in your application as you want. So there's like, you can have maybe services for feature or I don't know, you can come up with, it depends what you build in and what sort and how complex is your application. But yeah, you can implement as much services as you want. But you probably don't want to go crazy about it because in this particular case, your Angular components might become tightly coupled and it might be hard to test. So you have to think about that as well. So basically, but yeah, you can implement as much reactive services as you want. It not necessarily needs to be just one service in your application, right? You can create 2, 3, 5, I don't know, 10 maybe. But yeah, don't go crazy about it, because your components might become tightly coupled. You might come up with some sort of facade if you want, but I don't know. But at some point, basically, you might reach a bottleneck, saying, "Hey, I don't want services anymore. It's too much. It's too complex now. My application going too crazy. It's growing fast, right? And probably I want to bring a state management solution, right? And it's something I will talk soon."
Sounds a lot like progressively changing as you go forward with more complexity.
Absolutely,
right?
exactly. Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I do want to point out real quick about this concept that I was kind of talking about, where you could have an instance of this, multiple instances of the service to keep multiple groups of state, right? When we talk about an application-wide state management like NGRX or NGXS, we're thinking along the lines of a single store for the entire app, and you're fragmenting pieces of that store, right? But I think one of the challenges is, let's say you need a fragment, a slice of that state, but you need 3 or 4 instances of it, because your UI says, hey, I have 2 zones on the screen, and each of those pieces that I'm displaying need to have the same state, but different state values in them at the same time. Like, I don't know, I don't have a good example, but right off head, let's say I had 2 address forms next to each other, right? And they both did address validation, and I need the results of the address validation for each of them to keep in state. So I really want the address validation state to be a version for the left side and a version for the right side, because I'm operating on them independently, right? So something like this service that we see here, we could, if we didn't provide it in root, we could provide it at the module level or component level for each of those. And now we keep, so it's like component state, right? Where you have each instance, the component keeps its own state. Now you're saying it, but it's not a component state. Now it's a service state, but I could replicate it. Yeah. Sorry.
Any more questions or notices? So yeah, that's basically an application. Just to recap really quick, it's very simple, but it's enough. It's good enough for this sort of demonstration. We come back to this application later on today, and yeah, I just go with my presentation then. So yeah, as I said, you can npm install this Rx service in your app if you want to use this approach. Yeah, to read more details on that, you can just check this URL. Okay. So let's talk about state management now and how it could be helpful to simplify component communication in data flow. I guess there is lots of people who watching this show. Maybe they have their own opinions on that. The best state management solutions they usually use in their project. I can guess probably what's the most popular one. But yeah, if someone can comment, it would be great, I guess. So here's the top 4 state management solution for Angular: NGXS, NGRX, Akita, and yes, you can use MobX also with Angular if you want. I guess most of the people know about those state management solutions already if you spent a little bit of time with Angular. So yeah, those solutions here, and they working. Each of these solutions is working. It just depends on your preference, I guess. So it's like a belief, right? Like Christianity, Buddhism, and you can't say my religion is better, but any religion as you want. So yeah, it's same thing here. But the religion here is probably translated into code style. So you can say, hey, my code, this library matching my code style, I want to use it. So yeah.
I've heard of all of them except for what was the last one?
MobX. MobX, yeah. MOBX.
Okay.
So what are the benefits of state management? Using state management, we can simplify the component communication and implement predictable data flow in our application. It makes it easier to test and debug the application. You can apply same consistent practices across the teams within your organization. And as a result, your teams may become more productive and ship new features faster. So now let's talk about NGXS. So NGXS actually, on my opinion, is fully qualified as a progressive state management for your Angular application. applications, and soon you will see why. So what are the features of NGXS? NGXS is simple to learn. It has minimum boilerplate. NGXS is all about Angular thinking or Angular way of doing things. As dependency injection and decorators are the first-class citizens of NGXS. I know there is some people saying, hey, decorators is like experimental, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, if you don't like them, then yeah, sorry. You can even use promise-based async operations for some edge cases if you need. So yeah, you can, I think, I can't remember if Matthias were talking about promise-based. Okay, you know what? There is actually a great talk by Matt. So from, no, not by Matt, by Mark. So he's a lead of NGXS. This talk he was given at Angular show, I guess, a couple of months ago. So if you guys want to learn more about details of NGXS and how you can use promises and stuff like that, you can check this podcast. So yeah, it was great. And also NGXS backed by a great community that you can reach out on Slack if you have any questions or want to discuss anything, or just say hi. I will give you a link on my latest slide today how to join the Slack if you want to join. So NGXS provides you a global immutable data store. Components can dispatch actions to mutate the data. You can handle the actions once they dispatch. You can select pieces of the stored data using selectors that expose the data in a form of observables. Selectors actually a very powerful concept of NGXS, and if you want to learn more about selectors, you can watch talk from last week on NGAir. The power of selectors by Matthew Carinata. I also provide link in the final slide. As you can see, NGXS gives you a predictable cycle, and it might be very beneficial to use NGXS in a complex application with a crazy data flow. So at some point, you might realize you had enough reactive services in your application, and you want to just move away from it to a proper, fully featured state management solution. So let's see how to convert our reactive services to NGXS. So I'm referring to the same demo. So now it's NGXS part. So it's the same idea here, same components, basically same logic. From client price side perspective, nothing changed. But let's see what's the difference in the code. So here we are. As you can see, structure is pretty much same. The same number of components. So let's take a look at state folder. And now here we have these 3 additional files. As you remember, before I had just one service, and here I have, now it's not like a service, it's like a state. I call it state. Let's take a look at the counter state. It's kind of source of truth. It becomes source of truth. Here, as you can see, it might be looking very familiar to you. Same interface. Same initial state, and now the part which is different is here, actions. So we have now a couple of, actually, before talking about actions, let's talk about just functions. So here you can see number of functions, and what else? Yeah, and each of these functions decorated with action decorator. So when we dispatch in this action, like update value 1, update value 2, the function associated with this action will be executed. So we're not going like counter state dot update value 2. We're not going that. We are going like state dot dispatch action name. So, and that's how we're executing these functions. And so this counter state decorated with state attribute. This way, so we can pass also initial state if you want. So yeah, it's looking pretty much similar as from services, reactive services perspective, but a code slightly different, but the idea is exactly the same. So unfortunately, you cannot copy paste bits from state. Not everything. As you can see, you can copy paste interface and initial state. Yeah, but all the rest you need to change slightly. So you define in actions as a classes. So every action represented by a class with a payload or with no payload. It depends on the nature of the particular action. And the bit here is selector. So it's another concept from NGXS called selectors. So we, as you remember, in case of reactive services, we have to subscribe for a piece of data. But here we're using selectors. So you just define a selector. You're saying, hey, this selector returns value 1, this selector returns value 2, this selector returns value 3. And if you want to summarize, you can create another selector, value 1 plus value 2 plus value 3. As you can see, you can put business logic within your selectors. It's a great place to keep your business logic here. So let's see how our components looks like. Is there any changes? There is a little bit of change. As you remember, we got a value $sign in a previous case. So now we also have a value $sign, but the nature of this value $sign is different. So now we referring to our selector. So whatever is value 1 returns, it will be assigned to as an observable to value $sign. On JNIT, we do nothing. And then if we want to update the value, we're just dispatching. So we're dispatching the action. So just to compare side by side. So yeah, that's, oops, no, not that. So that's side by side. Oops, sorry, guys. So this is services. This is NGXS. So yeah, that's side by side comparison. Yeah, a little bit different.
So the selection of the piece of data that you need simplified with this, and you've brokered off the logic of knowing which one to pick from the component down into NGXS level because you have a selector that's exposing that now.
Correct.
So now if your state, one of the benefits of that is if your structure of your state, you need to change it and say nest that value 1 underneath some other property. You make all those changes in your state library, your component doesn't need to ever update because the component is using the selector. That's
Exactly.
away from it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great abstraction. And guess what? Is there any changes in parent component? What do you think?
In the template?
Yeah.
I think no.
Yes, you're right. It's looking exactly identically. There is no any change. Yeah. So yeah, you just change a little bit code here, initially implementing the state, and then you change a little bit of code in your component class. But yeah, your template looking exactly the same in this particular case. So yeah.
And that's because you were working with observables. So you had your reactive state that you said, I'm working with observables, so you can use the async pipe. And now you come in and replace that with NGXS, or even if you did NGRX, you're still working with observables.
Exactly.
And so now your template doesn't change. That still stays the same. And now you're, awesome.
And it's a good point, actually, you brought. You can use any state management. You can use this approach for any other state management solutions, right? So it doesn't matter. Yeah. I like NGXS, that's why I'm talking about it. If you like anything else, you can go ahead and just implement that. Yeah.
So where's that counter? I want to see the counter. Can you go to the counter code real quick where you show the total?
So sorry, man. Yeah, exactly.
There's something interesting there too.
I want to show you that as well. So that's my counter. And here I'm just selecting a sum. So I'm referring to my sum selector and just displaying, it's get assigned to value $sign property in my component, and it get displayed exactly the same way. So using this nice async pipe. Yeah.
So before you had the sum being calculated at the component level.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point.
And so now you've moved that logic into your state management, and now you can easily reuse that sum selector in any other component. So if you had to have your header bar show the sum, you could drop that in and not worry about having to copy paste the logic, because now you got it.
And I think if I refactor the previous service, I probably can do something more clever than that. I might move this logic somewhere else, because maybe this logic actually belongs not to component level. Maybe it belongs to service. Maybe I have to put it here, just call public sum method. Maybe it's better to move it here. But yeah, you're right. In this particular case, I was calculating sum on the component level, but here I'm not doing it. I'm calculating the sum on my state level. Yeah.
I think that's one thing that's important. We talked about it on the show last week, is once you start thinking in terms of selectors and you have that as part of your tool set to use, I think you start gravitating towards thinking about these solutions. Whereas without selectors, you might not, this might not become apparent to you to jump out and say, oh, I could just put that inside of my state logic, right? And so that's one of the big power of selectors, is you start thinking about, I have this tool now to encapsulate business logic.
Exactly. And if you, for small application like that, it probably doesn't matter. Like if you put this logic in the component level or in a service, right? But on a big application, you have to think about it very properly. And if you're using a state management solution, you don't have to think much where you put this logic. You just go and put it here in selector. Easy, right?
So you're saying the whole point of state management solutions is just to think less, because
absolutely. Little bit of opinions.
It's kind of like think less out at the UI and component level, but think a whole lot more in your state management business logic level. But you ultimately have to do that anyways, because at some point you have to be thinking about your business logic and put it somewhere and manage it and ensure its integrity and regression over time. So not having it spread out along the UI side and having it more contained in like a state management side, I think leads to a lot more efficiency and peace of mind over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's been said before, you can use any other state management if you want, if it's matching your code style or your belief. Yeah. So if you don't have any other comments and questions, I can move on to the next slide. I think I showed the demo. Yeah, it's working the same way. Let's move to other slide. And so now I want to talk about NGXS plugins in a little bit detail. NGXS has a thing called plugins. It's actually where the progressive part of NGXS comes. The plugin system allows you to tap into the state changes life cycle. So you have to extend, you can extend the core functionality of NGXS. Here is a list of plugins built by community that is currently available as separate NPM packages. So you can just simply NPM install that into your app to get the benefit of it right away. If you want to learn more about NGXS plugins, check this URL, and I will show you some of plugins in action later on soon. There is such a thing called NGXS Labs. So if you're looking into NGXS, you have to know about this as well. It's like a separate org on NGXS, on GitHub that exists to test out and to prototype new ideas and proof of concepts. Something potentially may become a part of NGXS core functionality or an official plugin in the future. There is a lot of things available right now at NGXS Labs that you can play around. Some of the Labs plugins actually production ready, so you can go ahead and install it in your production app and just use it. If you want to learn more about NGXS Labs, check this URL. And now, as a last thing, I want to show you NGXS Data plugin, which is part of NGXS Labs. NGXS Data is an is a persistence API, API based. Yeah, it's persistence API based on repository pattern. It has a lot of great stuff in it. And probably the main benefit of using NGXS data plugin is that you write even less boilerplate. As you saw today, you're not writing much boilerplate using NGXS, but with this thing, you write even less. Now let me show you how it looks like in action. So I'm referring now to NGXS-data part of my application. So the structure here is the same number of components. From client-side perspective, it's all the same idea here, nothing changed. And so let's have a look at state folder. Boom, just one file here. Oh no, where all the rest? So yeah, it's just again, like it's pretty familiar. Counter interface. So defaults. Oh, actually, here I'm passing defaults this way. I probably have to declare it a variable. I don't like it. I don't know how I'm doing it, but anyway. So let me show you all the rest. That's the number of exact number of functions. Update value 1, value 2, value 3. Looking pretty much similar as a previous example. The difference here, now we're not using selectors, we're using this computed function, computed property on this class. So this way we calculating the summary. Let's take a look at parent component and not get surprised, guys. There is nothing wrong here. There is no code. Maybe some of you wish it will look like this. Yeah, maybe in the future, but now that's what we have to deal with. We have to inject our state like into constructor, and that's all we need to do. So let's take a look at our template. It's pretty much the same, except now we are selecting values from our state a little bit differently. So now we're saying it's actually state counter is it's our state variable, right? We injecting the state into component, we're getting this variable counter, and now we're just saying counter.update value, counter.update, blah, blah, and so this way we call in the functions, and to call the property, we're going counter.snapshot.value 1, and we getting the value, the recent value this way. So yeah, that's a little bit of difference from in template, but I like this. So it means you have to maintain less code, which is good. So yeah, and if you look into our container, it's all the same. We're injecting just a counter state here, and in our template, we're saying, hey, counter.sum. So sum is a computed property, so we have to refer it counter.sum. So it's not coming from some snapshot object. So it's not counter.sum because that's the difference. So it's a property.
What happened to the observables?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Are you saying that like
all
you're sad that they're gone?
I'm shedding a little bit of tears.
You're alone if that's what's happening here.
I'm curious about change detection and on push, even though we're not using observable anymore in the async pipe.
Yeah. So it works. It's working. I believe it's on push.
That's why you had that little wizard emoji there.
Yeah.
It was just because it's just magic.
It's what it is. So yeah, that's how it looks.
Okay, wait. So it is magic? I'm confused. This is awesome.
Yes, it's awesome magic.
Is it? Would you use it in production?
It's production ready, yes, and there is lots of companies using it. Actually, the main contributor, the author of this plugin, he's using it at his company on a large scale. Yeah.
I guess it might come into play if this parent component had a child component and it was using a value from state and handing it to an input on a child component. that's where I would be wanting to investigate the lack of the observable. But because this parent component is the one that's rendering it in the value in its template, then I think it has the ability to do that with the on push.
Yeah, I don't really know the details of implementation of this package, but it's something I have to take a notice here. So it's a good point.
Does it provide access to observables for those values, or are they all just straight values accessed off of that counter data state?
I don't think I can answer to this question right now.
Gotcha.
As well, but yeah, I will follow up. I can follow up on that.
Cool.
So, and from client side, again, it's looking exactly identical. But what I want to show you now is how we installing the plugins. So to enhance the functionality on top of your state using the NGXS plugins. Let's take a look into app module. So I have a couple of plugins installed beforehand. It's just an order of npm install. So I have this developer experience plugins, which is Logger plugin and Redux DevTools plugin installed into my application. So that's my Logger plugin. So it's really helpful to debug application. You just install that, and you can, and every change on your state will be logged in the console, so you can actually browse it and see if you're happy about it or not. So it kind of gives you a little bit of better developer experience. However, if you're not happy about that, you can use Redux DevTools. It's also supported, so you just npm install another package, and you ready to go to use this Redux DevTools. For those who don't know, Redux DevTools is an extension for browsers. So it works for applications which powered by Redux. However, NGXS not like fully following this Redux pattern, but yeah, but the Redux DevTools works with NGXS as well. So yeah, this way you can just have a look at your state. You can time travel if you want, see how your state changed, what's causing this change, and if you catch in a bug, you probably might be helpful for you to use this Redux DevTools. So yeah, let's see what else more I got today. Yeah, this link if you want to read more about NGXS Labs data plugin. And now I probably want, unless you guys have if you have more questions, I'm happy to answer. But yeah, just for now, I want to just wrap up. So that's one of my last slides. I just want to summarize. We spoke about progressive state management, how to approach data flow in Angular application using reactive services, and then how to convert your reactive services into NGXS. And then we touch on NGXS plugins and NGXS Labs, and we played around with NGXS data plugin. So try to follow up that approach, and if you like it, I hope it will make you a happier Angular developer. So you can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Also, if you want, you can learn more stuff, Angular stuff. You can subscribe for my new newsletter on my website. And yeah, that's the final slide with all the links if you want to learn more about NGXS. So I guess that's all what I wanted to talk to you today. But yeah, I'm still happy to answer the questions if you have, and I will try to fix my camera because I want to show my face.
That's such a lovely yellow, though, darling.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do have a quick thing on can you go back to the code for the most recent one, the last parent one with the counter? I think it's the parent component TS. For
So
the data one, yeah, the NGXS data one, yeah. So in the parent component, I think.
Yeah, that's the parent component.
Yeah, this one will do too. So you were showing how it got simplified, right? And I think one of the aspects of that is a little nugget in here that we could talk about that's not specific to state management, but is something that we could use overall, which is making that accessor public, right? The public access modifier on our parameter, our constructor.
Right. That's the difference as well. Yeah, it's good that you catch it, because if you as you set it private, it won't be accessible here. I mean, it will be error. And maybe I don't know how Angular compiler will go about it, but yeah, you get the okay. Let's just do it private.
Yay! And let's see if it breaks.
You can do it, but you see, it should actually.
Runtime it'll fail, or maybe the build time it'll fail.
Yeah, I will try to refresh the window. Let's see the console. Oops, the console. Is there anything going on here? Let me refresh. Let me see the other window, the console window. Okay, yeah, actually, that's what you got. Oops, hang on a sec. That's what you get in that's a compiler error you got now. My VS Code doesn't reflect that for now. I don't know why, but yeah, it should actually highlight saying, hey, this you can't call reset because because there is no function on this class or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
But so by leveraging that TypeScript syntactic sugar, by saying, hey, this is public, it puts that counter class, that service, as a class field that then we can now access in our template. And it simplifies a lot of our code, right? Because you might approach it and say, look, I've got the pattern is I make it private. I've got it now on my component. And on that click back in my template, I need to create a new class method called handle click. And inside of my handle click method, I need to call counter dot, add or whatever. So we can remove all of that complexity of that additional class method and everything by simply making this public and just calling it directly from our template.
Yeah.
And the danger in this is because otherwise we would have everything be public.
Well, so I would say, like, if I came in and let's say you did that in your code here, and I come in 3 months later and I've got to add some functionality to the template, and I go in the template and I'm like, oh, well, I have the counter object. I'll just call this method. But you didn't really want that method to be called from the template, right? There could be something like that concern over there of what you're making public.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to think about very carefully what you want to make public or what you don't want to make public. Yeah.
So let's say this method had, update value 2, but in this component that you're adding it to, you don't ever want, the intent is not to call update value 2 from that component, right? So by exposing that as public, somebody could accidentally go hit the dot syntax in their editor and see, oh, there's an update value 2. I'll just call that, right? So you still kind of run into that if you're going to use it in the class. I kind of don't find really too many barriers to why I might not want to make it public. Just knowing that it's a tool in the tool set that I can use to simplify code and manage code over time. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it too, the other thing is, like, if I have that as public, then it creates, whether it's public or private, it's going to create a class field on the class that it creates an instance of. So it's going to store that in memory somewhere. But then if I made it public, I can call those methods directly. If I start adding other handler methods, like on click of this one, on click of that one, now I'm increasing the size of my class object to have those other methods that are just wrappers around calling that other piece. So I'm increasing the size of my code and my bundle. So thinking about things to reduce that as well.
Martin commented that I actually prefer having methods for these things and not doing it from the template because it would be hard to track in the template what's going on. Having it in the class is easier to orientate in. So.
And I think that's a great point. And that's something that, these are these things that you think about in terms of which way to go and evaluate all the pieces that you need. You maybe think about unit testing your component and clarity of understanding of reading the component, like he mentions here, they mention here. Those are all things that you want to bring into your collective conscious when you think about, should I do this or that?
Okay.
Sorry, guys, about my camera. I
No
still cannot
worries.
fix it. I probably need to restart my computer. It's happened like second time for the last couple of months. So yeah, it's not something happening occasionally. I'm not sure why.
No worries. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour, so we'll do some picks and then we'll wrap it up. Alyssa, do you have any picks today?
Just these amazing. What are they're from Poppin. They're sticky notes, but they're the size of my face, and I use them everywhere, and they're excellent. So if you're like me and your to-do list is lengthy, definitely check out those sticky notes. So yeah.
Now, you're not writing your password on those sticky notes, right?
And then sticking them directly behind me during stream.
Right. All right. Security breach. All right. Alexei, do you have any picks that you want to share today?
Yes. So if you guys want to use NGXS, make sure. My pick today is NGXS options, which you can pass to NGXS module, so which can improve your developer experience. So have a look at development mode parameter. You can set it to true, for example. It will add additional debugging features for your application. Also have a look at selector options. So it's all in the docs. So that's my picks today. Basically, those awesome options which are available for NGXS. So yeah, have a look at those. But spoken aside of NGXS, what is my pick? Oh man, actually, it's yeah.
Well, that's a good pick. You don't have to have any other ones. You got it.
If I still have a time to think about, but I can't speak anything right now.
No, it's a great pick. You got it. You're good. We appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Hey, well, Alexei, thanks a ton for coming on, for sharing your time and sharing your knowledge and this content. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, actually, I have a pick.
Okay.
Bicycle. It's the best pick. I bought bicycle in the middle of this pandemic thing, and it's really helping to escape your room by still being isolated. So that's probably my pick.
I love it.
For the last 3 months, I'm doing 300 Ks in months. So yeah, in total. And yeah, it's really helping to keep your fit and actually, not get bored. You can take a phone with you, take some pictures, and you can Instagram stuff like that. Yeah.
Are you using anything to track your distance that you're riding or anything?
Yes, I do. I have this Samsung Gear, so yeah, Samsung Watch, and I'm tracking it with my Samsung Watch. Yeah.
That was like 2 extra picks right there. Awesome. Nailed it. All right. Well, thanks again. Really, really appreciate you sharing your time. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks you guys for
so much.
being able to come to you. And yeah, it was great to talk to you today. And thank you for all these conversations about NGXS and about your feedback on the code. So yeah, it gives a little bit of thoughts on my code as well. So yeah. Cool. Thanks a lot.
All right. That's a wrap.